Hello, everybody. Welcome to my lecture. Hope everybody is enjoying the course so far, and you're ready for the next lecture. And before we do that, I wanted to wish everybody a very happy Thanksgiving, and I hope everybody gets some time off to spend their time with their family, to eat, to drink, to enjoy, to relax somewhat, with your loved one, friends, family. Maybe get time to do some shopping and get some good deals. So I hope everybody having nice and safe holidays. So to add to that, this holiday spirit, I wanted to share some news with you, which is sort of a good news for at least for you, for the students. So I was looking at our course end date. So our course started on 21st October for 7 weeks, and the end date is December 8th. So what that means is that our course will end on December 8th, Sunday. And that means that the 7 weeks of our course includes the Thanksgiving week as well. And, I went to MBA office, I double checked this, that are you sure we are ending on December 8th, which includes the Thanksgiving week as well. And the answer I got is yes. So this semester, oh sorry, this course ends on December 8th with all your deadlines on December 8th for week 6 and 7. I think those are your three exams, your last assignments and discussion posts, which are due on December 8th. Okay, so these are the assignments which are due on December 8th, which are your three exams from chapter 8, 9, 10, your assignment number 4, and of course your discussion question. So those are the things uh, which, let me see if I have it laid out. Yep. So those are the things which are due. So this is what I will do for you, for the students, because I don't feel that you should be working the Thanksgiving weekend week as well. So as I said, as per the registrar office, December 8th is the deadline for this course, and then I get 4 days to finish the grading. And then I have to. I think I don't get 4 days. I think I get 3 days. Let me just check it quickly on the online calendar. Yes, so I was right. Uh, you guys end on December 8th, and then I have to submit your grades by 8 a.m. on Friday, which is December 13th. So I'll get 4 days, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, to sort of do my grading, which includes not only your course, but some of my other courses as well. But this is what I'm going to do because I want everybody to have that little bit extra time for the Thanksgiving break. I will change the deadlines for whatever is due on December 8th. I will change that to December 10th. So out of my 4 days, I will give you 2 days, December 9th and 10th. So I'll make everything due by December 10th, and then I have to do quick grading on 11th, and then 12th night I will post your grade on Blackboard and WebAdvisor. So again, so instead of having this due at the end of week 7, which is December 8th, I'll change your deadline so that now you get 2 more days, 9th and 10th. So that way, the next week, the Thanksgiving weekend, you don't have to worry about work or anything. So you have those 2 extra days from my side, and hopefully that might help a little bit, if not a lot. Okay. So again, happy Thanksgiving. Have a good time with your family. Okay. So let's get back to the lecture. Okay, so everything is set here. Welcome to lecture. Welcome to my lecture on chapter number 8. I hope everybody's ready. Your phone is switched off, and you got your beer with you. Oh, I'm sorry. I mean your coffee with you, just like I do. Yes, I do have my coffee with me, just to confirm. Okay. Okay. So chapter number 8 is on designing the human interface. And so basically what that means is, mainly by human interface, is the process for designing your forms and reports. So far, we have done the conceptual design of the system with our, the first stage of our design with our DFDs and entity relationship diagrams. We have already designed those. And now the time has come to first, in this chapter, we will talk about designing the human interface. You can call it user experience. You can call it, designing forms and reports. So generally UX, user experience, or driving as user interface or human interface. You can call it any of those things. So that's what we are doing in chapter number 8. Talk about designing forms and reports, what goes into that, various pieces of that, like formatting for labels, texts, boxes, tables, text boxes, labels, how left are they supposed to be, left aligned, right aligned. So all those things. I'll give you a little bit of a higher level review of that, and then if you can read a little bit more of basic stuff from the book chapter. What I have seen nowadays, and then you can you can tell me by email or something whether you agree with me or not. Generally, the part of designing this human interface, which is your reports, forms, all those things, is nowadays done by a product designer, a specialized person who has a design degree. Maybe the person has a design degree in user interface, in user experience, maybe a graphic design, graphic modeling, all those things. Additionally, a lot of packages like wiring and all those, there are a lot of packages which are available, which already has inbuilt templates, prototypes, to sort of give you a start as how to design a form and reports. So as a MIS analyst, once you're done with user requirements and gathering, we will not be sitting and designing a forms or reports in like Java or VB.NET or some other front-end programming language. But that's it's a little bit more of a specialized work done by digital designer. An MIS person, of course, can also be a digital designer, but then your job would be designing forms and reports, the front end, not doing the system analysis, which is DFDs, ER diagrams, or gathering user requirement. So just wanted to talk about that. I just wanted to put that in front of you. So when it comes to designing a forms, let's first start with forms, because they are sort of the most important part of an application. Without a form, you will not get a customer or customer account, because that's the first interaction a customer or a prospective customer or an interested customer or an interested client has with the company is when they reach your your website or your application and they register for an account. So that's sort of the starting point. Then of course, forms are what drives revenue or sales through the electronic commerce, or if you're trying to sell a product or services to a company. Let's say you are an electronic commerce company. So forms are sort of a very sort of a basis of providing a good user experience to users, and those users could be our customers, or could be internal clients where you are developing an application for your IT department, and you are developing it for your salespeople, marketing people, financial people, things like those. So I was listening to one of this YouTube video, and they mentioned this person. I think his name was Luke Webrowski or somebody. He's very well known in designing forms and reports or user experience, and he's had this saying which I really liked. So he said that designing forms is like the last mile, but the most important mile of a very long journey of system analysis and design, you can say. So which is very true. It comes right at the end. You are done your user requirement gathering, you have converted them into DFDs and ER diagram, and now the only thing left is maybe using some template and creating forms. But it's sort of the most important part of the whole process, because that form would be our sort of an interface with the customers or with a client. And I'm sure you all have experience with going on online, interacting with various websites, forms, things like that. So I always think of this example, especially when for the first time, let's say you're opening an account at a company. Let's say I already have an Amazon account, so now every time I buy something from Amazon, I don't have to enter my username, password, or my credit card number or anything like that. It already has my detail. But you think of the first time you open a new account with any website or any company, and I would say that first interaction, or the first time when you're creating an account, that's a very crucial time, because a customer is ready to open an account, provide a credit card number and all his details, his or her, sorry. And if we can accomplish that, then we will have that customer at least for multiple transaction. But I have seen that a lot of time, a website or a company loses a customer right when they're opening an account, because the form is so poorly designed, or it requires so much of cognitive effort, right? There's so many fields. You're opening account, it says, okay, this is your name, first name, last name, then what is your company name? I don't have a company name. I am a customer. I get confused with that. Or, it asks you to enter your address, and, like it doesn't use any pre-fill API. So you have to type in your whole address. You have to type your city name, with the state names. You have to go through this long list. And even the worst thing I found is that where you even have to enter your country name. I can imagine that if a website is hosted in America, and they can see your IP address, which is from America, or 90% of your customers are living in America, just put United States of America in the country by default. If somebody is coming, let's say from Canada or Europe, they can change that. So make life easy for at least 90% of your customers. Spend some, try to see if you can reduce the cognitive load on your customers. Same thing when you are opening a account. Like I have seen this on Netflix and Disney Plus, which just came recently, that when you are entering your username or your email ID, sorry, it has now started adding at the bottom @hotmail.com or gmail.com or Yahoo. Why? Because they're making it easy for you. Otherwise, it's so difficult to enter your whole email address on a smart TV or on a phone. So these are some of the things which I feel are something which a good design of form should take care of. The other thing I want to add is, and again, I'm talking of very overall, and you can, the book goes into very detailed nitty-gritty as how a label should be, things like that. But I'm just talking about from my experience. Uh, Another thing which is very important is having a consistency. So you have your website with multiple pages, or you have an application with multiple pages. They all should have a consistent design. So if you're using a certain color, or you're using a certain, let's say you are using a certain length to show a field, you should stick with that length of the field, or the text box throughout your form design, so that your form is consistent, the design or navigation is intuitive, uh, and again, this is the next thing which I'm saying is my personal opinion. So I feel that like some things have become a norm. Like we expect the save button to be the save button to be somewhere on the top here, or the file to work like that, just in this application. So certain things, or like the print button should be there, things like that. This is how the save button should look like. So some things have become a norm, and I have learned that how to use a certain feature or something. So whether that's a good design or a bad design doesn't matter, because now users are used to doing a way in a certain way. So sometimes, even though a design practice might be not that great, might not be that logical, but if customers are used to doing the things in that way, you should continue. You should incorporate some of those. You can call them bad design features, but if that's what the customers are used to, either you can change it somewhat, or you can provide them training if you are completely changing the design. Some of the other things which I don't think this lecture gets into, this chapter gets into that much, is nowadays a lot of design, human interface design, is meant for mobile phone and tablets. So which I would recommend that you read a little bit more about that on your own. I remember we did one discussion post on that as well. That how does the design changes when your layout or your interface is through a mobile device, maybe a smartphone, maybe a tablet, or something like that. And the main thing is, in a smartphone or a tablet, screen size is limited. You don't have a dedicated keyboard, and even when the virtual keyboard pops up, it takes half of your screen right away. So those are the things you have to now consider in that context as well. You cannot have very heavy pictures, graphics, and you want users to use one finger to do everything. You don't want them to start typing in. They don't have a dedicated mouse or a keyboard, so a finger is input for everything. But that's sort of maybe a different chapter or a different topic from this. So that was sort of my opinion about this whole chapter. Now let's get in some of these a little bit more in detail. Okay, as I said, earlier, forms and reports are produced sort of the end of the system analysis phase of the SDLC. And both forms and reports are based on, or they are related to DFDs and ER diagrams. For example, every input form excuse me, every input form that is associated with a data flow, entering a process in a DF diagram. And every output form, or better would be, generally it's a report, or a report is the data flow produced by a process on a DFD. So that's how it relates to a DFD. And furthermore, both the what you have inside a form, or report, the contents of both forms and reports should correspond with the data elements which we have specified in both DFD and entity relationship diagram. And sometimes, when you're designing a form, you might discover a flaw in your ER diagram, which will force you to go back and revise your ER diagram, and so that you can make a correct form based on that. I'm assuming everybody knows what a form and report is. A form, might already have some predefined data, and then it might require more areas where a user enter further data. Or you can even think of it, a form is something which sits on top of a sort of a container or a table, and form is used to sort of record data, enter data into a table or into a data storage container. And on the other hand, report is your output of a system where where whatever data you have gathered through form or other thing, you are converting into some this meaningful information which you can understand. You're sort of pulling data from multiple records, multiple tables, or maybe multiple databases, like in a warehouse. And then you're creating this output, this report, which is easily understandable, which is sort of standardized result, which then you can share with your peers, with your boss, or sort of convey that what does this data mean? What are sort of the trends you are getting from it, or what kind of prediction you are making, things like that. Okay. So moving to the next one. Okay, so what's the first step of designing a forms or reports, both? In designing a forms or reports, we follow a prototyping approach. And what do I mean by that? That is the first step of designing form is that when you are doing requirement gathering, requirement elicitation, you're asking users what they want the system to do, or what should it accomplish, things like that. So that also gives you sort of an ability to understand the skills or the abilities or the level of your users. So you want to know what is the skill and abilities of people who will use this system, what's the purpose they will use it for. Are they using it on their in their office, or they're using it while they're traveling? Is this report or this form, let's say data entry form, is it used by only a couple of people, or there are more than multiple people using a form or report, which means that you have to do a little bit more extensive extensive requirement gathering. And after you have this information, then you do sort of this initial prototype design of a form, and which you can further, through multiple iterative steps, you can further refine as you show it to maybe your project stakeholders, maybe your end users, to sort of understand, so that they can also understand what they want from that form or report, or how it should do. So you create this prototype in an iterative manner. You get it sort of informal testing, you can say, or you get it evaluated from your users, and it goes through multiple level of iterations. How many levels of iteration? Again, that depends on how much time you have, how much resources, time you have, plus how much time can the end user provide you with looking at your forms or reports and evaluating them. But that's sort of that prototyping and that iterative method of informal evaluation from user. That's what you go through to have some sort of your forms design. And you can design, generally it's recommended that you design this in VB.NET, Java, or HTML5. Those are some of the programming languages you use to design forms and reports. Mock screens, creating a mock screen as how your form will look like. You can do those on on these various softwares which are available nowadays. In this assignment, you will be creating a sort of a mock screen or a mock layout of your form. You can do that on a Word document, which is what I'll ask you. I'll ask you to do. But as I said earlier, nowadays you do have you know tools available to you, some automated tools available for you, which can do this mock design as well as the sort of the basic layout of a design with the best industry practices. So they can do most of the framework design and most of the foundational work for you. The other key thing to remember is when you're creating forms as well as reports. First, let me talk about forms. That you want to know what your users are using. One of the first basic thing is, are they using Mac or Windows? It might sound very simple, but I, as an end user, I use multiple softwares in a lot of my classes, and I use a lot of different softwares since I'm in a technology field, and a lot of my softwares are very niche software, statistical or other some development software. So they are very niche. They have a very small market, and most of these softwares are developed for a Windows operating system, and I have such a hard time running them on Apple, especially for my students who have Mac. So they actually, not I, some of these my poor students, they have really hard time making sense of the software on a Mac, and sometimes the instructions don't match how the software looks on a Mac if they have Mac compatible. So that's the one thing. The other thing you have to remember is what if it's an online application or a website, what are the users using? Chrome, Mozilla, Safari, and again, you should do testing with all those things to see that your layout sort of fits on all those web browsers. Talking about reports, I still remember I did this some time back. So I developed this report which looked pretty good on tablet, on laptops, desktop, phone. So I created this nice report with nice layout and everything. And then I remembered, this report which I created was being used in one of the conferences we were having. And when, on the day of the conference, they put this report, which I was very proud of. And I tested it on multiple different kinds of, devices, laptop, desktop, phone. But on the day of the conference, they had this huge around 30-40 inch screen, and instead of being in a landscape like the normal way which we have screen, they had the screen turned sort of on a vertically, so your screen was straight. I think it's called portrait, where it's like right now if you look at your screen, it's in a shape of a rectangle with the longer part in front of you. But what if you twist your screen, it becomes like a long vertical screen, and that's how my report was being shown, and it did not fit correctly on a vertical screen. Okay, so I paused my video, and so so this is what I meant by vertical screen. I hope I want to clarify that. So that's how the screen was in the conference, and my report did not look good at all on that screen. So because I never tested it, its layout was not meant for that. And I don't want to tell you the company name which I used to create the report, but then I was talking to somebody who was a really good programmer. He said if it was made up in Java rather than using a tool like a data visualized tool like Spotfire, Tableau, Power BI, instead of doing that, if it was developed in Java, it would have it fits to the whatever screen you have. So I did have that issues. Okay, so moving on. So what are deliverables and outcomes? So as part of the deliverable, every stage of system analysis and design has a deliverable. That what is the outcome of that, that phase. So here you can think of the first one is narrative overview, which is, to your sort of a sample design of your form. You will add information like, who will be using this form, for what purposes, what kind of, whether they will be using Windows-based server, sorry, not server, operating system. What kind of environment would it be? Would it be like a terminal screen, a large screen, a vertical screen, or a normal standard office? An example of this narrative overview is, I think, on your figure 8-4 on page 244 in your book, and it sort of provides all the relevant information about that form, environment it's being used, operating system, what purpose, and what kind of screens, or sort of a you can say hardware it will be used on. Okay, go moving next. So your table 8.3 in your chapter, talks about various methods to highlight or to highlight information. And the reason for all this method of highlighting information is you want to tell users if there's a error on the form. How should you inform that? Is there it could be an error, you want to raise a warning as certain process or data entry is not being done correctly, or you want to make life easy for a customer by drawing his attention to certain keywords or to certain commands or shortcuts which they can use to enter data using a form. So all these color differences, size differences, font, all these are meant for mainly to notify user of any errors or raise any warning or reduce their cognitive load on the user. So for example, one example which comes to my mind is, let me get something here. So just to give you, or right here, I can use that, not this one actually. I don't have a good example here. That's fine. I'll come back to it. Okay. So let's say, this was a certain text box in my form, and by something as simple as the length of my text box, I can help user as by telling him indirectly that how much input am I expecting from him. So for example, if it's a state, maybe that's the length of the input I'm expecting from him, indirectly telling him its abbreviation he has to enter. On the other hand, with something longer, address or something. So this sort of gives a user some way of telling them that how much data they should be inputting in there. Then how to display text on a form. Generally, the good user requirement is no need to write everything in uppercase or lowercase. A mixed case, or which is a sentence case, is generally recommended, which is generally how something like this. This is like a sentence case, or here every starting letter of a word is a capital. So something that is recommended. Spacing, again, how much spacing you should have between words, letters, lines, sort of somewhat driven by how much space, how big of a form you have. Alphabets, characters, they should always be left aligned. Dates, numbers should be right aligned. Use of abbreviation should only be done when it's commonly understood. Like for example, state. Everybody understand OH, or that state abbreviation. What does that mean? So when it comes to designing table and list, you can look at table 0.5 on your book. Most of these recommendations are pretty obvious, but just to provide you a comparison in these two forms, I sort of not a poorly designed form. B is relatively much better form than that, than 8.8a. And you can right away see the labeling is much better in the form on my right. On your right, uh, the numbers are right aligned with proper decimal points alignment. As you can see, the spacing is much better. So as you can see, the numeric data is right aligned, and textual data is of course left aligned, as I was saying earlier, with adequate space left here. So form B is much easy to read, much easy to understand. Okay, moving on. So now talking about the process of designing interfaces and dialogues. So as part of designing interfaces and dialogues, it defines the manner in which us humans, us users, and your machine, the computer, we exchange information. And as discussed earlier, we use a prototyping approach to design an interface, and a design specification being the primarily deliverable from this activity. So I think we already discussed this when this screen. I think I went through this earlier, a little bit on the top when we were talking about that right there. Okay, on slide number 10. So I'll go through that. Okay, so let me talk about designing layouts. So the book talks about that in a lot of companies. Still, a lot of information is first stored on a paper-based form or a paper-based system, which is then you do data entry on an online system or an application system. So which might not be the case in some of the companies you work for, might be the case in some other companies, where they're still in the first interaction with the customer, they are entering all this information on a paper-based system, but not in many places nowadays. So if that's the case, both your paper-based form and online form should have some sort of resemblance to each other, so it's easy to data to be transferred from one form to another, from paper-based to application-based system. Designing it, you should have enough flexibility to move around, move freely between your system, between your forms, between your various fields. So these some of the information, as I said, this is some very straightforward basic information which is there in your book, which you can read about some basic design features for forms, for text boxes and things like that. I think the last thing I will talk from this chapter is providing help on your forms, on reports, or how to sort of design that. Some of these guidelines are simplicity, your message, help message, return once somebody has asked for a help or typed in their question. Help messages should be short and to the point. Information should be easily understandable by users, and should provide examples to users. I think these are easily said and done. I would say even now, some of the most popular systems. I'm just saying in a very general term. I'm not saying Microsoft help is worse than something else or better, but I'm just saying in a simple terms, like my review, that getting a help from a system is always, or like for example, let me do this. So help. So we have come a long way in getting help. So some of these are really good. I would say that's pretty good. They have a nice information about that. There's a nice video about it, which I really like. So I think they have done a pretty good job of providing the help here. One of the really good tools which I like for having a nice way of showing help is the Tableau system. They have a very nice way of organizing their knowledge based system for user help. And but I still feel that when it comes to area of designing help for user, they're still lacking in most of the system. And I think one of the key reasons for that is a human nature. Developing human help, sort of documenting a system, things like those are not sort of a very fun kind of work. So nobody likes to do that. Everybody has more fun in designing a form report, doing programming, interacting with user or business people. So mundane tasks like doing documentation or providing help is always overlooked. But on the other hand, these are some of the important steps or tasks which makes a system easy to use and by end users. So that's sort of what my take is on that. So again, as I said, this chapter has a lot of other stuff about basic stuffs about displaying form, basic text boxes, labels, right align, left align text, which I would recommend that please go through some of these in the chapter. Okay, thank you. Take care. Bye bye.